Hi everyone, I want to take some time to provide you a short video with some of my common resume feedback that I provide. So I want to walk you through a few things with the 5 resumes that are in front of me and talk to you a little bit about the formatting and then get into the actual structure of the resumes themselves. So I have 5 in front of me, and the first thing that you can see is that from a formatting perspective, we have 1, 2, 3 that are 1 page. This one's actually a 2-page resume, and this one is actually a 3-page resume. So if I had a choice, my recommendation is to have a 1-page resume. So if you think about you having a 1-page resume or having a 2-page resume, then if you're able to more clearly articulate yourself in 1 page, then I prefer that versus 2 pages. Now, if you have a long job description with a lot of bullet points and some government applications require more than 1 page, then fine, go ahead and do that. But generally speaking, you would want a 1-page resume. I have 15 years of experience and I have a 1-page resume, so that just goes to show that you can articulate some of the important information on 1 page. A couple of other things that I want to highlight. So if we look at the names, they're up here in different formatting, the administrative stuff. So trying to minimize the space that it takes is important. Obviously, if we're talking about the 1 page, then each line actually represents one other line where you can't indicate some of the other parts of you that might be valuable to the company. So you want the name to be bigger and more prominent than the others, but otherwise pick whatever format suits your needs. In terms of font, I actually recommend using one of these types of fonts. So these are what we call the sans serif fonts. So these ones are the serif fonts because they have these little tails and these little flanges at the end. And if you were to take these 2 resumes and actually produce them side by side with the same font, this one would generally look a little bit more cluttered just because you have these extra bits on the font itself. So if you were to make a choice, try to pick something like an Arial, a Calibri, a Tahoma, or one of them that don't have the extra little bits if you had a choice. And making sure that things are lined up. So this one lined up all along the left side, on the right side. You could use a little bit more spacing on either side just to not make it so condensed, but you definitely want to make sure that all the bullet points and everything is aligned. And it might seem like a little bit of nitpicking, but if you think about it, if there's a dot, 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 and this one just was slightly off, dot, dot, slightly off, dot, 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 then you'd wonder, well, does this person actually even care enough to line up bullets, right? If they can't even line up bullets, then how else would they do on the rest of the stuff? This one is right aligned here. Another thing that quickly jumps out is here, it only has the years. If you look at some of the other ones, these ones have the months. And why the months are important is there's a big difference between January 2013 to December 2014, which is basically 2 years, versus December 2013 to January 2014, which is basically 2 months. And if you went to the extreme and said it was December 31st to January 1st, 2014, that's actually 2 days. So if I see as a recruiter that you're not including the months, then it's a bit of a red flag to say, well, what are you trying to hide there? So you'll notice here that a couple of them have these summary of qualifications or profiles or whatever. These 2 don't, and I'm not a particular fan of having these sections because they don't really say much. So someone is extremely hardworking, organized, and detail-oriented. I don't think anybody would ever put the opposite. And to me, that doesn't give me any context. So where were you detail-oriented? Were you detail-oriented in some of the work that you did, that you got paid to do? Were you detail-oriented at school, doing volunteer work? Or detail-oriented when you were in kindergarten, trying to line up the pegs inside the holes for one of the activities or crafts that you were doing? I'm not exactly sure. So if you actually have these, putting some context in terms of where you actually acquired those skills would be important. Or if not, just moving it down into the appropriate experience that you had. So in terms of overall sections, this one has education first, this one has professional experience. I'm actually a fan of starting with professional experience. And the reason being is that for professional experience, someone paid you to do that. They said that you were demonstrating enough value where they were willing to exchange funds for you. The volunteer experience, extracurricular or whatever, is great, but unfortunately you weren't paid to do it. But this is stuff that you did above and beyond, and you weren't necessarily paid to do it, but you went out of your way to do it. Now school, in all honesty, that's stuff that you have to do. In today's day and age, there's a bit of a requirement for you to get some schooling. So we know you really didn't want to be there, but you had to be there anyways. So work experience, volunteer experience, and then education. But again, it's up to you. You might want to put education first for the places where you think are a little bit more schoolist, let's call it, the ones where the school reputation is weighted a little bit higher. It's up to you on when to do it. But again, one page, I'll get to it eventually. A few other things on the formatting side. So if you look at this one, the work experience has the company and the title and the place and the date on two separate lines. And if you can manage on one line, then that would add a little bit more real estate because you're missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines here. And that would allow you to put 5 other points that where you added value that might be useful for the company. And in a one-page resume, then each line is very important. So if we would dive into some of the details, on this one they have a bullet point that says organizing and hosting student thought forum. Okay, that's great. Now, that is what we call an activity, something you did, versus an achievement, which is how well you did it. Did you organize the event and it was a success? There had 209 out of 10 ratings. They had more people attend than last year. Was it executed on time and on budget? Those are some of the things that I want to know and understand on how well you did it, because there's a difference between the person here who updated and created course content for faculty members and they did it with 200 errors that was delayed and cost them extra money in rework, versus the person who updated and created course content which had 0 errors, was done 2 days ahead of schedule, and basically was done at less cost than they had predicted. So they would have done exactly the same thing, but they wouldn't necessarily have achieved the same thing. So reserving the bullets for achievements is useful. This one is one of the few that has activities up at the top. So beside their title, they have evaluate and communicate feedback. Well, they didn't necessarily say how well they did it, but they mentioned that they did do it. But some of the stuff that they marked as an achievement was they increased students' understanding and the quality of papers by over 20%. So quantifying it is definitely useful to do. Here, they increase sales by providing purchasing advice. It's different than something like here where they say by 15%, by 50%, by 150%. Those are slightly different metrics. So those are most of the basic pieces of feedback that I provide to folks. Hopefully this was useful for you, and if it was, then provide some information on the comments and I might do a longer one and more deeper dive into any one of them. Thanks everyone.